Mike Harvey. I'm a software engineer at code.org, and today I want to share some of the work that we've done to migrate off of our fork and rejoin the modern Google Blockly ecosystem. So this isn't a talk about like an exciting new curricula or some flashy AI-powered app. Instead, it's kind of the quiet foundational work that pays off over time if you can get it done. Let's see, this one. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about. First, I'll explain just kind of some basics about like the open source fork model and how we ended up maintaining our own Blockly fork and why that created some long-term friction. I'll go into the main strategy we used to get through the migration, which was the addition of a wrapper class, and give a couple examples of what that looks like. I'll also talk about the challenges of prioritizing this work and how we created some momentum to through quick wins to be able to get more people onto the project and get it done in a more reasonable time period. And then finally wrap up with some benefits, not just reduced maintenance, but also unlocking new Blockly features, obviously accessibility and plugins and things like that. Okay, so this is going to be intentionally kind of basic here at the beginning, but just talking a little bit about this open source fork model, which, by the way, when code.org forked Blockly in 2013, that was the recommendation at the time. There's no shame in being on a fork, but there is probably some pain if you're still there. So let's do a little expectation versus reality. I want to ground us in how like many open source projects are structured. In typical fork model, you fork the project, you make changes locally, you propose those changes via pull request, and setup works great when the upstream and downstream move at similar paces. Things kind of keep close together. It's the ideal scenario. But what actually happened, and this is at the point when we decided we were ready, we were interested to start getting back onto mainline. We found that, well, our fork, we advanced by like thousands of commits, and the Google Blockly team had done even more thousands of commits. And so the divergence was really significant, making that reintegration basically impossible without some pretty major effort. Here's a quick look at code.org's project types. We saw the make code types. Boy, am I jealous of that, just those three project types. That's the way to go, by the way. Code.org kind of has a more is more philosophy. It's not necessarily a bragging right for us. But these are just some of the open-ended projects that we have, and those are the ones that don't use Blockly, which means Blockly is pretty foundational to the majority of our student-facing tools. Teachers and students rely on countless little small features to preserve the functionality of these labs. A lot of them were built by completely different people who are like no longer at the company, required a lot of like background knowledge and digging on my part just to even understand like how does our stuff even work. So we introduced this wrapper class. So let's talk about what that looks like. This is our starting point. Everything was tied to our Blockly fork. Code generation, workspace interaction, everything. The ultimate goal is to change that dependency. We want to replace the fork with Google Blockly as the foundation without breaking anything. But just like throwing Google Blockly into the mix is not going to work because they've diverged so significantly. So what we did was we created a wrapper class that kind of sits in between, and this allowed us to slowly migrate pieces of our code base over from one to the other. And the wrapper would handle abstracting differences and bridging the two different APIs that had diverged so significantly. And this made it possible for us to actually support both versions of Blockly simultaneously, depending on the lab or depending on like we had experimental URL parameters or whatever we needed to do to kind of start at it in pieces. So here's a quick example. Blockly.main blockspace. This is how old we are. I see the chuckling over there. Blockly used to call the workspace a block space. And so across our various lab files, we would see references like this all over the place. One way, potentially, to fix it, could you just do like a search and replace and replace them all with a get main workspace call? Not really for us, because if you do that, you're going to break anything that's not currently migrated. So we would use our wrapper, and essentially what this is doing is just defining a getter property for main block space. So when when we try to access blockly.main block space, what we're actually doing is accessing this getter on the wrapper. So that blockly object there is our wrapper now. It's not blockly itself, which means we don't actually have to change anything in these shared files, and it will work with either version. Okay, so let's look at a more complex example. The block on the left is from our Play Lab, and you can see it has a custom drop-down menu that we made where students can select from a bunch of different sprite images. And on the right is a picture of a block from one of Blockly's plugins it's called the Field Grid Drop-Down plugin. And you can tell that there's some similarity here, so this is exciting. It's like one of these cases where it's like code.org had an idea, and then parallel in a completely different room, Blockly had a very similar idea, implemented it through a plugin. Maybe we can just kind of like use Blockly's thing instead. Fortunately, it's not quite that simple because the way that we were using these is a little bit different. We couldn't just swap things out. So here's the plugin version at the top. You can see that we've got a menu generator that's either a function or just a list of options for the drop-down. It has an optional validator and some other custom configurations. They don't quite match the way that we're creating our fields. We do have a menu generator. We also have width and height. There's kind of a lot to unpack here. Not just that the signatures are different, but also the way that the menu generators are actually created is different. We went like totally rogue here and custom. Our menu generator options consist of just a URL path string and then the actual code value, whereas in modern Blockly, if you're using an image, you have this object that consists of the source string and the width and the height. And so we have to kind of like figure out how to adjust these things so that nothing breaks. And again, the challenge here is we don't actually want to change this code at all. The way that we address something like that is we create our own class, which fortunately is well supported in Blockly. You can have custom classes. We created a new CDO. Stands for code.org, by the way. Our CDO field image dropdown extends the one from the plugin. It has the same original constructor arguments that we had, and then we basically just manipulate them to get them into the right shape so that we can pass them into that super call for Google Blockly. What this means is we've got to create a new menu generator function that's going to take the strings and these top level arguments that we had and turn those into the image object representations that Blockly expects and just get everything in the right order. The undefined there is for the custom validator, which we don't rely on, so that just gets skipped. And then to tie it all together, across our various lab files, again, something like this, we'd have blockly.fieldImage dropdown with some options and some height and width. That doesn't change. It stays the same everywhere, except now remember, Blockly is referring to the wrapper. Inside the wrapper, we can just set field image dropdown to be our custom class, and we're off to the races, at least for that distinct problem. Okay, so those are just a couple examples of some of the types of problems we needed to solve. Lots of things that were like little quick wins, obviously some things that were even more complicated than either of these. But we got to talk about prioritization. You can kind of look at this as like a 2D thing where we've got, obviously unforking is really important, but is it urgent? How do we prioritize that? How do we get buy-in, really? Because I'm just, one lowly engineer at the code.org team, and I can say like, hey, we should unfork. People are like, what are you talking about? It looks the same. So we need to make some kind of like really demonstrable wins in order to get some buy-in. Anybody want to take a guess about what direction we kind of leaned into to get some buy-in? You feel free to shout out a theme if you think you know what it might be. I heard a whisper about accessibility. Yeah, that's it, exactly right. So accessibility ended up being crucial for this. So Not going to talk about keyboard navigation a whole lot. This is another accessible feature that Blockly supported that we looked at a couple of years ago, where we had a accessibility themed hackathon week at code.org, and with relatively little effort, we were able to introduce this new feature where you could change themes dynamically using the right-click menu. And this was a nice win for whether it was like users who were colorblind or users who needed or preferred a high contrast mode. You can also see, if you catch it in the context menu, there's an option there to enable keyboard navigation, which is, if you think about it, a really terrible place to put an option like that. But, kind of hackathon theme, that was just a quick and easy place to put it for now. But I was asked to give a demo to this to my team, and when people saw all the colors changing and they heard me talk about why, it was really eye-opening. And so all of a sudden, it went from me kind of like shouting from the rooftops, "We got to migrate," to people being like, "So it sounds like we need to migrate," because the catch is, at the time that we did this, we had only had 4 of our very many labs actually running on Google Blockly. We still had more than half the work to do. And suddenly they're like, well, can we get this in Sprite Lab? Can we get this in Dance Party? Can we get this wherever else? And it's like, well, sure. In fact, it's free. But first, we got to migrate. We need to get off of the fork everywhere. So let's talk about this mountain of labs. We got so much stuff. We have all these different Blockly labs. And when we decided to start with this, we picked our simplest one that just had a couple of blocks, which was Flappy down there at the bottom. And we gradually worked our way up the mountain. We made that quick win with accessibility right in between Dance Party and Sprite Lab. Sprite Lab's at the top of the mountain because that's a whopper. It's our most complicated Blockly lab. It had tons of custom craziness that we had to figure out. But because we had that reinvigoration of the process, we were able to get like 3 different engineers working on it. And if you'll permit me to lead into the pun, that allowed us to push us over the Blockly summit. And at that point, most of the work was already done for the remaining labs. And so we were able to get all the way up and down. This is downhill because some of these were so fast that we were able to like take care of what they needed to be moved to Google Blockly in like just a couple days. So there was some hard work along the way, and then it did get a lot easier. And as of January of this year, from the student and teacher perspective, we've fully unforked. Nobody is using the code.org Blockly fork on the site anymore. So yeah, oh my God, it's like a multi-year effort, and it's like finally done. It was a huge effort. Like, lots of people involved. You might recognize Rachel and Mary Beth from here. This is from our party when we finished Sprite Lab. We all got on the call to celebrate. We brought back some people who used to work for the Blockly team and who used to work for code.org and the people who are doing it now, just to kind of acknowledge that this was a big undertaking. Mary Beth in particular, I'm looking for her. I thought she was going to... She just walked out because she knew I was about to say, like, couldn't have done it without her. If she had been here, I was going to make everybody give her a standing ovation because her support has been absolutely crucial to this project. Okay, let's talk about some fun benefits. We've got plugins now. We can do things like make blocks where you can paint with sprites. Like, this is so cool and fun. By the way, if you want to talk to Katie Frank, she designed that curriculum. She gave a great talk about our Music Lab tool yesterday, but she also made this awesome game design thing. So we were able to add new features to existing labs. We also were able to take advantage of other plugins like this. The shareable procedures allows you to have functions that are defined on one workspace and called from another, and keep everything in sync. By the way, this was a plugin that the Blockly team built because they knew how badly we needed it. If you're resistant, if you're like hesitant to start unforking because you know that there are going to be tough problems to solve, like just reach out to the Blockly team. I'm sure they're going to do whatever they can to help because they want to see all of us succeed. And then we also have some like other cool custom features like these. These blocks include a flyout in the block that provides context-specific other blocks such as sprite pointers and parameters for functions that help students focus on learning a new concept without having to require them to look through a large categorized toolbox. And speaking of toolboxes, we know that they can be a pain to get set up. We use like separately scoped toolboxes for every level in a lesson progression. And so this is our toolbox mode that allows our curriculum writers to quickly do things like change the order of blocks in the toolbox, update like default field values. And this is actually, as well as set categories and things. This is just being done in the Blockly UI. There's also a nice little change listener on the workspace that automatically cleans everything up so it snaps everything to a grid so you can kind of get a preview of what the toolbox is going to look like when you set up your lesson. And of course, keyboard navigation. Couldn't mention that. Couldn't give this presentation without mentioning that. This is available live on our site right now just in one place, which is with our special music lab tutorial, and I got to give a shout out to Brian and Hannah from my team who gave a great workshop about that yesterday as well. Like, this isn't just a code.org effort. Like, so grateful to folks like the Blockly team, of course, Microbit Education Foundation, Code in the Schools. Everybody's been kind of coming together to solve some of these problems together. It's been really invigorating for me as, you know, a long time CS educator to see that like we're actually all trying to solve some of these same problems together, and you can participate in that a whole lot more once you're not on your fork, because until then you're kind of stuck solving every problem yourself, even if other people have already solved it for you. So these days I can, you know, just relax because I know that we've got people like, you know, Matt on the Microbit team who's doing a ton of work here, and we get to benefit from that. It's so cool. So yeah, I hope if you haven't unforked yet that you'll take it as an opportunity to kind of join into this community. So that is all I have. Yeah, I'll repeat the questions because I'm not sure if the microphone was working. The first question was, with all those different project types, lab types, were we using the same version of Blockly originally? The answer is yes. But the number of like different types of customizations that those individual apps relied upon was huge. So we couldn't just do everything at once. The second question was about, are we still using the wrapper? Yeah, unfortunately, getting everybody meaning users onto Google Blockly, that's been like the biggest, most important goal. And we still have that wrapper scaffolding that exists. For now, it's actually useful because if we want to internally just kind of like, oh, what did this look like on the fork? Maybe a bug report came in and we want to check to the regression or whatnot. So we do still technically have support for both versions of Blockly. There's a nice cleanup step that I'm looking forward to where there will be hopefully a lot of really red PRs that I look forward to merging. But that's part of the work is still in progress. Let me know if you have any ideas on how I can get prioritization for that, because that's really a tech debt problem at this point. But yeah, great questions. Okay. Alrighty. Thank you so much.